We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
And we begin our service today with these words by Reverend Sharon Wiley. It is said that ministers are here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable. May our time together this morning be a comfort and a confrontation. May we here find peace in times of tumult. May we here invite tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in time of restlessness. May we here allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the place you consider what you've never considered. Let this be the place you imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in the world. Come, let us worship together. Our opening hymn is No Ordinary Song with words and music by Elizabeth Alexander, performed by Laura Bettinas Healy.
As we lift our voices on this day, many hearts are heavy with despair. How can our lifted voices find a way to bring us one step closer to repair? If a wounded world we wish to heal, we must sing no ordinary song. Make it a cadence relevant and real, its every measure purposeful and strong. Let this song our greatest hopes contain. Well-fed children be its just refrain. Roofs over every heartbeat be its tune. Its harmony from peaceful cities hewn. Sing of hope while hammering each nail. Sing of joy while pulling every weed. Sing to renew a covenant grown frail. May every alleluia plant a seed. May every alleluia plant a seed.
And our stewardship testimonial this morning comes to us from the Flansburgh family, Catalina, Sandra, Margaret Flansburgh.
I'm Margaret Flansburgh. I'm very happy to support this church in both with my participation and my monetary commitment. Leonard and I, my husband, were grateful to find an established congregation in Oklahoma City after years of being part of a very small fellowship, 4 to 5 couples in northern Michigan. We had both learned there how much work and financial support a religious group needs to function effectively for its membership and for its responsibilities to the community. After moving to Oklahoma City, I was pleased to find a full staff, good programs, an RE program, and many opportunities to serve both the church and the community. I, at that time, was preoccupied with teaching at UCO and OCU and working on my doctorate at OU. But after retirement in 2000, I was able to participate more fully in church programs, and especially to join the choir and the Alliance, where I met a group of very active older people that I had never met before, working together. When Leonard and I were designated congregational treasurers, we knew that it takes money and work to support an institution like First UU. As an art historian, I like our physical home with its proud steeple among the crowded neighborhood buildings, and the spaces in the church are filled for me with memories of gatherings and planning meetings. The church has been especially good to my family when our son Mark, who was an active member of the church, died here, and now our granddaughter Catalina has had some good years being active here. I appreciate the staff that works hard and needs support, financial and social support, and I appreciate our outside commitments to organizations. I love going on the parades, the Pride and the Martin Luther King Day parades, and being with people that are active and participating in the community. I continue and will continue always to support financially the programs here through my pledge and through additional support of different programs that turn up. And I will appreciate everybody in this community for all the support that they've given to all of us through this long time of the pandemic.
Well, I'm Catalina. Well, since I was 2, I've been going to this church, made lots of friends, lots of memories, especially when it comes to congruity, coming of age, rallies, child's camp, rock grotto, especially being part of the board and just growing together as one. I guess you will say we are lucky to be part of this community. I don't remember much what happened while I was a little kid, but I hear and I know I've been loved by each and one of this community, and I'm grateful to call this church my second family.
And I'm Sundra Flansburgh. Catalina and I moved here when Catalina was 2, and we've been in this church for 17 years. Before we moved to Oklahoma City, my life had really been moving around a lot. As a young family, we moved around a lot growing up, and I continued that adventure when I was an adult. And when I moved here, I wanted to establish roots and give Catalina a place to call home. And that's meant that this church that we walked into was already part of our family. We walked into a church that knew my parents very well, that my brother had loved and had loved my brother. And Catalina and I were just welcomed in with open arms. That's meant it's been a place to learn together with the congregation and to grow together, to learn to forgive, to be forgiven. It's all the good and challenging things about being in relationship with people over years. I have been involved during this time in a lot of different ways with the religious education program on the Lifespan Faith Development Committee in its previous incarnation. Doing a little teaching, although that's not my specialty, but just loving how the church took care of Catalina, expanded her in ways that never would have happened just in our little family. I went to social justice committees and was doing activist kinds of things, and then I think I found my place when Tammy Greenman and I first got involved with thinking about establishing Voice, of course, and that's where my soul work has been. So I believe in institutions. I believe in institutions that are capable of doing self-reflection and of growing and learning and challenging themselves, and that describes our church. Um, and I also feel like we, with my social justice bent, we can do so much more in community than I could just as an individual out there, and I love that about our church. I also feel like the institution has a history that's really important, and our building represents some of that. But we have a long tradition here in Oklahoma City, like I think the oldest church, and our present is so exciting with what we're starting and doing now. And I feel like it needs a future, and I believe it has one. And that takes money. We have top-notch staff. We have to be able to keep top-notch staff and to give them the resources that they need and to make them feel valued. And we have to fund the things that are values that we care about. So that's why I pledge every year. I try to raise my pledge every year, and have in the past 10 years, I think. And it's by far the biggest amount of money that I give, because I know it makes a difference and it's important. So that's the Flansburgh family story. Thank you.
Our story today is a Signs message written by me, Tim Atkins. Once upon a time in the land of mystery and make-believe, Princess Tabitha pulled up to her new home in her horse and carriage. Her driver quickly rushed to the side of the carriage, opened the door, and led the princess down the side steps. He nodded as the housekeeper rushed to greet the princess and began to take her trunks to the front gate. Princess Tabitha was new to the region. A beloved auntie of hers had recently passed away and left Tabitha this castle. The princess, excited at the prospect of moving to a new land to make a fresh start, set up the arrangements to move at once. She arranged to keep her auntie's housekeeper, Ms. Crutchfield, promising a fair wage, and set off to try and make her new castle feel like home. She loved her auntie, but perhaps not her auntie's sense of style. She wanted to begin with giving her castle a new name. Every castle had a name, of course, but Rose Petal Manor just didn't seem to suit our Princess Tabitha. She wanted a name that would both honor her aunt and honor where she came from. She remembered how when her aunt would visit her, they would always go to the hot springs in Emerald Falls. She decided to name her new castle Emerald Estates, as she always liked things that began with the same letter. She didn't quite understand why her housekeeper looked at her askew when Princess Tabitha announced the new name of the castle. She was even more confused when the sign maker in town, because every castle needs a good sign, questioned her repeatedly on why she would want a sign that read Emerald Estates. In fact, all day when she told people in town the name of her new castle, they looked at her quite strangely. When she arrived home that night, she brought in her housekeeper, Ms. Crutchfield. After explaining her odd experiences that day, Princess Tabitha continued with, "I fear I might have upset people." Ms. Crutchfield bit her lip. "Oh no, I see that I must have. Please tell me, Miss Crutchfield, what forever did I do wrong?" "Oh, Princess, I couldn't. I am just a mere housekeeper, and you are a princess. There's nothing," Princess Tabitha interrupted. "Please, formal courtesies are not needed. I need you to tell me." "Ma'am," the housekeeper began, but Princess Tabitha continued, "I assure you I will take no anger from what you have to tell me. Now please, Miss Crutchfield." Housekeeper Crutchfield sighed and said, "Okay, as you request, Princess. It's the name." The name? Princess Tabitha had no idea what Ms. Crutchfield was referring to. Emerald Estates. "Whatever is wrong with the name Emerald Estates?" Princess Tabitha demanded. "I named it for my dear auntie and where we would travel together, Emerald Falls. It's a beautiful place where I come from." "I see," said Mrs. Crutchfield. "Here, however, emerald has a very different meaning. Many years ago, a great dragon attacked our people at Emerald Bay. Many lives were lost, what became known as the Great Emerald Dragon. And ever since then," Ms. Crutchfield trailed off. "Well, I certainly didn't name my house after your dragon, Princess Tabitha said after a moment of silence, as I had never heard of it. Ms. Crutchfield bit her lip again. Princess Tabitha sighed softly and asked Ms. Crutchfield to please speak her mind. The people here, they don't know your story behind Emerald Falls. They know their story behind the Emerald Dragon. And seeing your sign every day, although it reminds you of something happy, reminds me and my people of something sad. But I didn't mean it, said the princess. I'm so sorry. Ms. Crutchfield nodded. I understand, of course. I shall come up with a new name. And with that, the princess dismissed her housekeeper. The princess spent some time considering and decided on the name Marigold Manor. She remembered how vibrant the marigolds were at the Emerald Springs, and she was still able to keep the same letters she loved so much. And this time, she asked her housekeeper before ordering the sign. Thankfully, all was good, and Princess Tabitha began to settle into Marigold Manor. Over time, however, Princess Tabitha decided she wanted to make some new friends. So she decided to throw a party. Oh, how the princess loved parties. But she didn't know anybody in town. So she decided to write up a list of things that she loved as a way to let people get to know her. Soon she had put up a few parchments across the town reading, Princess Tabitha invites you to join with her at Marigold Manor for a gathering on the eve of the new moon. Lovers of cats, books, stars, flowers, needlework, chamber music, art, and discussions are most welcome. The new moon was just days away. She and Ms. Crutchfield were busy with preparations, ensuring the new Marigold Manor was in tip-top shape, and a wide array of food was attained for the event. Princess Tabitha was excited to see who would show up, and she was excited to start to learn the residents of her new village. When the evening of the party came and went without a single soul attending, Princess Tabitha was crushed. Ms. Crutchfield came across the princess, crying softly in her study. "Oh, princess," said Ms. Crutchfield, "do not despair." As the princess continued to cry, she said softly, "Do they all hate me? Is it the name?" Ms. Crutchfield shook her head. "Oh, your grace, it is not. We just don't have anyone in the village who loves cats, books, stars, flowers, needlework, chamber music, art, and discussions all together. We will have to advertise the hamlets further away." This caused the princess to stop crying and look at her housekeeper with confusion. "What do you mean? You told me you love needlework as well." "Oh, of course. Many of my friends enjoy needlework." "Well, why didn't they come then?" the princess asked. "Well, just because they love needlework doesn't mean they also love cats, books, stars, flowers, chamber music, art, and discussions," replied Ms. Crutchfield. The princess stared at her housekeeper. "I didn't say that I only wanted to talk to people who loved in each and every one of those things." "You didn't?" asked Ms. Crutchfield. "No!" exclaimed the princess. "But your sign, ma'am. Ask for lovers of cats, books, stars, flowers, needlework, chamber music, art, and discussions. And when you ask for lovers of cats, anyone who didn't love cats stopped reading. When you asked for lovers of books, anyone who didn't love both cats and books stopped reading. And so on until there was no one left. I was trying to find things in common with people," the princess wailed. Ms. Crutchfield nodded. "But when you start saying only some people are loved, it doesn't really make it a party that everyone wants to go to. Because what if they don't fit into who you love? They don't know you yet. If people don't see on your sign that they are welcome too, they won't even try to come." Princess Tabitha nodded and bowed to change. She wanted to put up signs advertising a gathering for the next new moon and specifically said everyone is welcome on her parchment signs. She showed them to Ms. Crutchfield this time before hanging them across the village. Princess Tabitha could see Ms. Crutchfield hesitating. "Oh, no, not again," exclaimed Princess Tabitha. "Please, please tell me what I've done wrong. I thought saying everyone is welcome is the right thing." "Oh, it is, ma'am," said Ms. Crutchfield. "But I don't want you to upset more people." "How would that upset more people?" inquired Princess Tabitha. "Well, do you truly mean everyone is welcome? Everyone?" Well, seeing the princess nod, Miss Crutchfield continued. "Well, princess, Marigold Manor is not welcoming for everyone." "What do you mean?" asked Princess Tabitha. "I want everyone to be welcomed here. I'm a perfectly nice and loving person." "You are, ma'am," the housekeeper agreed. But there are people in this town who are unable to climb the stairs to your great hall, and how could they come to your party? You have powder rooms off your great hall, but they're labeled for lads and lasses, and what if you are neither? If people aren't able to wear fine clothes to your party, would they feel ashamed? If you say everyone is welcome, but not everyone is actually welcome, people won't trust you. Why would they want to come to a gathering at Marigold Manor when you said that they would be welcomed, but they really weren't? The princess interrupted. No, when I say everyone is welcome, I want to mean it. Please bring me a master builder to begin discussions. So it took a few more new moons before she was ready to host her party, but this time when the Princess Tabitha advertised everyone is welcome, she meant it. That night, about a third of the village came to her gathering. The following month, it was half. And after a few more months, the entire village would come to her monthly gatherings. Over time, Princess Tabitha began to learn more about her community. She began to learn more about their celebrations, their fears, and most importantly, their history, all under the tutelage of Ms. Crutchfield. Princess Tabitha's knowledge continued to grow deeper, and over time, she knew she had to show her beloved housekeeper her gratitude. The princess was stuck on ideas, but eventually realized it was time for Ms. Crutchfield to be the housekeeper for her own home. One day, the princess surprised Ms. Crutchfield with a cottage of her own, and the first thing the housekeeper did was plant some marigolds in her new garden. Although Princess Tabitha would still make the occasional mistake from time to time, the princess would learn and change over time. The two of them grew to be chosen family, and Ms. Crutchfield never missed a new moon gathering. They truly lived happily ever after. The end.
And our reflection today is from Lynn Ann Wagner.
I'm Lynn Ann. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the chairperson of the Welcoming Congregation team and an ally to gender diverse people, which is an umbrella term that includes, but is not limited to, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. Being Unitarian Universalists, allyship to and activism for marginalized groups is part of our religious DNA. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and we're called to work for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. As an ally and activist trying to aid gender diverse people, I listen when gender diverse people talk, and I try to lift up their voices and understand where they are coming from. I educate myself on gender diversity and issues that affect gender diverse people. I understand that gender diverse people can't be expected to do the work of justice and equity alone. It is my responsibility as an ally to help. Right now, there are bills throughout the nation that would keep gender diverse people from being able to go to the bathroom safely, legally change their names and gender markers, access gender affirming medical care and have it covered by insurance, participate in sports, have the right to not be fired due to their gender diversity, serve in the military, and more. In Oklahoma, 3 bills attacking transgender youth did not receive hearings in committee and will not advance this week, due in part to calls, emails, and protests by Oklahomans. I also support bills like the Equality Act, which passed in the House this week, and I will contact our senators in support of it. I try to introduce myself with my pronouns and include my pronouns in my digital presence. I use gender diverse people's pronouns, and when I make a mistake, I apologize and work not to make that mistake again. I speak up when someone says or posts something incorrect or hurtful directed at gender diverse people. I support organizations like Freedom Oklahoma, which is currently offering name and gender marker change clinics, and the Diversity Center of Oklahoma City. I wear a pride flag bracelet and transgender flag bracelet to show that I support and stand with LGBTQIA+ people. I'm searching for a "You Can Pee With Me" button so gender diverse people know that I'm a safe person in the bathroom. I've seen some of our youth at 1UC wearing these buttons. I'm a cisgender person, and this is an oversimplified definition, but it means that my gender identity corresponds with the sex I was assigned at birth. As a cisgender person, I have never felt fear for myself when entering a public restroom. This is not the case for most gender diverse people. I cannot imagine what it must be like to regularly enter public restrooms, not knowing if people will comment on your gender expression or possibly be the victim of a hate crime for just going to the bathroom, something we should all be able to do safely and without worry. I have spoken with gender diverse members and friends of this congregation who feel uncomfortable with the restroom situation at our church and are forced to seek out the only restroom that is not gender specific on the main floor, or go to one of the restrooms on the second floor or in the basement. To support all of our members, friends, and visitors, the Welcoming Congregation team, with board support, is working to change the signage on all of the restrooms at our church so that everyone can feel truly safe and welcome. What can we do to be truly welcoming to gender diverse people? Here are some ideas. Those of us who are cisgender can take responsibility and educate ourselves on what it means to be gender diverse and on the struggles these precious people go through just to live as themselves. We can do the deep inner work of evaluating our prejudices in order to change them, and we can learn to deal with our own feelings of discomfort as we address changes that benefit marginalized groups. We can all introduce ourselves with our pronouns and add them to our name tags in person and on Zoom, social media accounts, and email signatures. We can strive to be advocates, raising our voices for our gender diverse siblings to our elected officials and others in power. We can support changes that help to make gender diverse people feel more safe, welcome, and supported. I am thankful every single day for my gender diverse loved ones and for the precious gift of them sharing their lives with me. Because of them, I am inspired to constantly learn and grow in my allyship and activism.
Good morning. My name is Susan Bishop. I am the immediate past president of the board. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I also serve on the Accessibility and Inclusion Ministry team and this year's auction team. Every Sunday we take an offering. All the cash and designated checks from that offering go directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community, our Change for Change partners. This month, our Change for Change partner is Manos Juntos. Located in the southwest part of Oklahoma City, Manos Juntos offers free health education, physical examinations, laboratory testing, and medications for people who are low income, uninsured, unemployed, or undocumented. You may wish to make a donation to our Change for Change partner using a credit card through our website, or you can always write out a check and put it aside to mail to First Unitarian tomorrow morning. Let today's offering reflect our highest aspirations for the work of this church in our world.
Sarah was a young woman in the best of health until she was diagnosed with a form of brain cancer. After surgery and treatment, she was able to get on with her life, but she was left with a severe short-term memory deficit. Among other effects, she was unable to remember where she had parked her car, which made even simple shopping trips pretty terrifying. She went through the process of getting a disability hang tag so she could park in an accessible parking space in direct line of view from the store exit. But that's when a different kind of trouble started. She'd returned to her car to find that her antenna had been snapped, her side mirror smashed, her car keyed up one side and down the other. People would glare at her and say things like, "I didn't know lazy was a handicap." Unfortunately, Sarah's story isn't particularly unique. It's not uncommon for people who don't use a wheelchair, but who have other disabilities that require them to utilize accessible parking spaces or restrooms to be judged, glared at, and sometimes even worse, by other people. Part of the problem is the sign that we use to indicate that a parking space, restroom, or other facility is accessible to people with disabilities. That little stick person in a wheelchair. That sign was created by a Danish woman back in 1969. And originally, it was a highly abstract symbol, and the little stick person didn't even have a head. It was intentionally abstract because it didn't necessarily mean that something was accessible to people in wheelchairs only. It meant that something was accessible to people with different kinds of disabilities. Over time, though, the symbol became a little more realistic. A head was added, the body was fleshed out, and starting around 2010, more dynamic icons featuring a little stick person leaning forward with little flash marks on the wheel as though it's in motion, those started popping up. And here's the thing. Human beings don't just make signs. We are shaped and influenced by them. Over time, we can forget that they are tools for helping us get around in the world, and they become messages that tell us what the world is. For too many people, the symbol of the little person in the wheelchair means just that. This thing, this restroom, this parking space, is for the exclusive use of people in wheelchairs, or at any rate, for people who have a clear mobility disability. And we judge the heck out of anyone who doesn't seem to fit that description. Here's another story. This one is about a transgender person named Alec who talked about their experience using public restrooms in light of the many transphobic bathroom bills making their way through the legislative process in the United States. Quote, "I did not use a single public restroom at all until the age of 18 or 19. Like a lot of trans people, I have a urinary tract condition from having to hold because so many of us were too afraid to even use the restroom. So we just didn't. That's where I start. Even before this flurry of bills, there's been a long history of many of us not using restrooms because we were too afraid of what would happen in them. I don't remember how I did it. I don't think I could do it now. In high school, I never went to the bathroom. I just held it." Unquote. The signs we use for public restrooms are among the strangest signs of all. Many signs are actually icons, pictures of things they represent. So think about the picture of a bicycle that you see in a bicycle lane, for example. But restroom signs haven't traditionally been pictures of toilets or sinks. We've learned to identify restrooms by little stick figures representing men and women. A little stick figure with legs and a little stick figure wearing a dress. And sometimes the word restroom isn't even included. It's just a little symbol of a man over the word men and a little symbol of a woman over the word women. It's as though the most important function of restrooms isn't what happens inside them, but sorting out the genders of who goes into them. And according to the signs, you only have two choices, and you have to choose one. That may be fine for those of us who are cisgender. Again, a loose definition whose gender identity aligns with the sex we were assigned at birth. That is, unless you're a parent with a young child of the, quote, opposite sex, or a person with a disability with a different gender caretaker. But for those who are transgender or non-binary, making that choice can be dangerous and dehumanizing. On one hand, if you make the wrong choice, it could lead to actual physical endangerment. And on the other hand, if you are constantly forced to make a choice between two options when neither describes who you are, what does that say about your very right to be? What if, instead of functioning as a binary gender sorting device, a restroom could just be a restroom? Here's another story. It's about something that happened at a Unitarian Universalist General Assembly back in 1993. The year was the 250th birthday of Thomas Jefferson, and the General Assembly was taking place in North Carolina, which was in the UUA's Thomas Jefferson District. Now, a minister from the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church in Charlottesville, Virginia, thought it would be the perfect occasion to throw a period dress costume ball in honor of Jefferson. But many of the Black folks and their white allies at General Assembly didn't think that was such a great idea. One Black Unitarian Universalist asked, "What am I supposed to wear to the ball? Rags and chains?" At the first plenary session, Hope Johnson stood in front of the crowd, and she asked how they could support honoring a man who was, quote, an unrepentant slaveholder who advocated for the extermination of indigenous people in America, unquote. Lots of the people in attendance were afraid that the whole thing would unravel at that point. But instead, the two sides got together and they talked it over. The ball went on, even though few attended. Now, just a couple of days after this, Hope Johnson was attending an anti-racism workshop where she was randomly assigned as a discussion partner that very minister who had promoted the idea of the Jefferson Ball in the first place. Out of over 3,000 people, of all the luck. Instead of refusing to talk to one another, though, they decided, let's have a conversation. That was the beginning of a long period of learning for that minister from Charlottesville, who had been so taken by the symbol of Thomas Jefferson, he had lost sight of Thomas Jefferson, the man. Jefferson, after all, enslaved over 600 people over the course of his life, including a young Black girl, Sally Hemings, by whom he fathered, against her will, at least 6 enslaved children, and at least 40 people who risked their lives trying to flee from his so-called care. It was Jefferson who also wrote, quote, "The Blacks are inferior to the whites in the endowments of both body and mind," unquote, and much more like that. Many white Unitarians had claimed Thomas Jefferson as one of our own, even though he never joined a Unitarian congregation, and even though by naming congregations and entire UUA districts after him, they were sending a message to Black folks that their feelings, their history didn't matter. But out of the discussions that arose at that General Assembly, things began to change. It took a long time, but eventually the Thomas Jefferson District was renamed the Southeastern District. It's now part of the Southern region, along with Oklahoma. Now, some UU congregations named after Jefferson, like the one in Golden, Colorado, have kept their names, but others have undergone the difficult process of changing their names in order to reflect their anti-racist principles and values. The Thomas Jefferson Unitarian Church in Louisville became All People's Church just this year. And the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church in Charlottesville, it will be voting on a new name at their congregational meeting this spring. So I want to end with one more story. This is a story about First Unitarian Church of Oklahoma City. It's a loving and caring community full of spiritual seekers, with a rich history of civic engagement and social justice advocacy. But we have a sign problem. On our congregational page in the UUA directory, there's a little wheelchair icon indicating that we're an accessible congregation. But a person who uses a wheelchair can't get into our balcony or up into the chancel where the choir sits and the ministers, or down into the youth rooms, or up to the children's chapel, or to our DLRE, to Tim's office. And we aren't accessible in other ways. We don't offer sign language interpretation or closed captioning in our Zoom services. We are only beginning the process of becoming intentionally inclusive of people with all forms of disabilities. And there's another sign problem. As Lynn Ann mentioned, our restroom signs reinforce binary gender divisions, sending a signal to our trans and non-binary siblings that they don't really fit. And there's one more. In between the sanctuary and Daniel Hall, there's a meeting room known as the Jefferson Room. It's not named after a previous minister or an important member of our church. It's named after, you guessed it, Thomas Jefferson. What message does this sign, this name, send to Black folks who come to our church seeking a spiritual home where they are loved and valued? One of the core elements of our faith is the belief that revelation is not sealed. Our religious tradition is a living tradition because we are always learning new truths, opening ourselves to new understanding. And as our understanding changes, so must the signs we use to reflect that understanding. Change is not easy, but this isn't an easy faith. The kind of change that allows for growth, increasing diversity, and sustainable vitality will bring discomfort. But instead of opting out of that discomfort, in those words of Hope Johnson, let's have a conversation. Please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation. I'd like to light some candles this morning. And this first candle we light in honor of the over 500,000 Americans who have already died of COVID-19. In their memory, we light this candle. For everyone who has lost, who has died from COVID-19, there are countless others who are left to grieve their absence. In memory of them, and with our prayers and our wishes that they may find healing and peace, we light a candle for those who remain. We also light a candle out of gratitude today. Gratitude that we now have 3 different vaccines available to us in this country, and that so many of us in this congregation have already received their first vaccination. Many of us too were on our way to recovery. For this, we are so, so grateful. But even as we rejoice, we remember that we are not out of the tunnel yet. We've got a long way to go, my friends. And it's this last lap that is in some ways the hardest. So for those who are still afraid, lonely, tired, so so tired, who are grappling with unemployment or underemployment, those who don't have internet, those who don't have the connection to community, those who are sick, those who are worried. We send our love. We light this candle. And finally, I invite you to offer up your own prayers, your own wishes for those who you carry in your heart. For yourselves, for our community. May it be so. Amen. And in the interest of time, we will skip our closing hymn today. And Susan, would you extinguish our chalice?
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
And now may you go from this sacred time and this sacred spiritual place, having been both comforted and confronted. May you embrace the change that brings new understanding. May you find the inner strength to be able to consider what you've never considered before, to imagine something new, something previously unthinkable. May you do this sacred work of comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable, even if that means yourself. May your dreams inspire the actions that bring new ways of being in the world. May it be so. And in closing, we'll play a little postlude, but please, after that's over, please come back. Please join us for coffee hour. I am so thankful to Kathy Schuster, who will be running or hosting our coffee hour for us today, as all of the staff will be over in our Completing the Circle session to talk about our communication. Blessings on each and every one of you, on all those you love. Be well, be safe.